The rain came down in sheets that October night, turning Sarah Mitchell's windshield into a blur of streetlights and shadows. 12 hours at County General had left her wrung out and aching for nothing more than her bed. She pulled into the driveway of 42 Maple Drive, killed the engine, and that's when her headlights caught it. A shape on her porch that shouldn't be there. A dog, soaking wet, matted fur clinging to visible ribs, one paw leaving dark stains on her welcome mat. Sarah tried everything to make it leave, shouting, bribing with food, calling for help. The dog would retreat to the edge of her lawn, but never farther. It just sat there in the rain, staring at her door like it was waiting for something only it could see. For 3 days, the injured animal refused to budge. It paced the same strange pattern, porch to oak tree, or oak tree to window, window to porch, over and over like a ritual. The neighbors complained. Animal control issued a deadline. Sarah's carefully controlled life began unraveling around this one stubborn creature that wouldn't leave her property. She had no idea the dog had a name, that it had lived in her house for 13 years, that it had been searching for 6 months, surviving on nothing but loyalty and hope, waiting for someone who would never come home. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from in the comments, and if this story moves you, leave a like and hit the subscribe button for more heartwarming animal stories. Now let's continue with the story. Sarah Mitchell's headlights cut through the October rain as she pulled into the driveway of 42 Maple Drive. 12 hours at County General had left her bones aching and her scrubs stained with coffee and antiseptic. All she wanted was a hot shower and 8 hours of dreamless sleep. Then she saw it. A dog sat on her porch, perfectly still except for the shivering. Medium-sized, maybe 40 pounds, with matted brown fur that clung to its ribs like wet newspaper. Even from the car, Sarah could see the blood, a dark stain spreading from its right front paw onto her welcome mat. "No," she muttered, killing the engine. "Absolutely not." She'd moved here 6 months ago specifically for the peace and quiet. A fresh start. No complications, no attachments. Certainly no injured strays bleeding on her property. Sarah grabbed her bag and approached cautiously. The dog's eyes, one brown, one partially clouded with age, tracked her movement. So she waved her arms. "Go on. Shoo. You can't stay here." The dog stood, limped down the porch steps, and retreated to the edge of her lawn. But it didn't leave. It simply lay down in the wet grass, nose pointed toward her front door, and waited. Sarah stared at it for a long moment. The rain drummed against her shoulders. The dog didn't blink. "I'm not a dog person," she said to the empty street. "I don't do this." She went inside and locked the door. Through the window, she watched the dog settle into its vigil, patient as a gravestone. Something about its stillness unnerved her, the way it stared at her house like it was waiting for something that only it could see. Sarah closed the curtains and told herself it would be gone by morning. It wasn't. Day 2 brought no relief. The dog had moved to the corner of her porch, so leaving a rust-colored smear where its paw had rested overnight. Sarah stood in her doorway with her coffee, watching it watch her house. "Still here," she said flatly. Great. She tried everything. Left a trail of leftover chicken from the street to the neighbor's yard. The dog sniffed it once and returned to her porch. Called her friend Jessica, who arrived with a leash and treats and confidence. The dog backed away from every approach, but refused to leave the property line. "It's like it's guarding something," Jessica said, puzzled. "Or waiting for someone." By afternoon, Mrs. Henderson from next door appeared at Sarah's fence, arms crossed over her floral blouse. "That animal has been barking all morning. My husband works nights. He needs his sleep." "I didn't ask it to be here," Sarah replied, hearing the defensive edge in her voice. "Well, you need to do something about it. We have leash laws in this neighborhood." After Mrs. Henderson left, Sarah called animal control. The earliest appointment was Friday, 4 days away. The woman on the phone sounded bored. "If it's injured and aggressive, we can escalate." "It's not aggressive. It's just there." "Friday," the woman repeated, and hung up. Sarah watched the dog through her kitchen window as she made dinner. It had started pacing, a strange, deliberate pattern. Porch to oak tree to bay window to porch. Over and over, like a ritual, like it was searching. "What do you want?" Sarah whispered. The dog stopped mid-step and looked directly at her window, as if it had heard the question. As if it had an answer it couldn't give. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the purposefulness of the dog's movements. This wasn't random wandering. This was something else entirely. Morning shift at the hospital brought its usual chaos. Trauma codes, medication errors narrowly avoided, the constant ballet of keeping people alive. But Sarah's mind kept drifting back to the dog on her porch. During lunch, she mentioned it to Marcus, a veteran ER nurse with kind eyes and 3 rescue dogs at home. "You said it keeps going to the same spots?" he asked, unwrapping his sandwich. "3 places, like clockwork." "Sounds like it lived there before. Animals have incredible spatial memory. I had a cat once that came back to my old apartment 2 years after I moved. Just sat outside the building for a week." Sarah set down her fork. "I bought the house from an estate sale. I never met the previous owner." "There's your answer," Marcus said simply. "That dog's not a stray. It's coming home." The idea followed Sarah through the rest of her shift. When she got home that evening, she didn't go inside immediately. Instead, she stood in her driveway and really looked at the dog for the first time. It was thin, but not emaciated. Old, but not ancient. Its coat, beneath the dirt and matting, had once been well kept. And its behavior, the specific routes, the waiting, the refusal to leave, spoke of something deeper than stubbornness. "You belonged here, didn't you?" Sarah said quietly. The dog's ears perked forward. It took 3 limping steps toward her, then stopped, as if remembering something, as if afraid. Sarah's chest tightened with an emotion she'd spent years avoiding. Recognition. She knew what it was to wait for something that wouldn't come back. She knew what it was to haunt the places where you'd once been whole. "Okay," she said, pulling out her phone. "Let's find out who you're waiting for." Inside, she began to search. The realtor's number, property records, anything that would tell her who had lived in this house before she'd tried to make it her own. The realtor, Diane, answered on the 3rd ring, her voice bright with professional enthusiasm. "Sarah, everything okay with the house? Who lived here before me?" A pause. "I sent you all the disclosure documents. Is there a problem?" "Just answer the question." Diane's tone shifted. "Thomas Whitmore. He owned the property for 40 years. Died last March. Heart attack. No immediate family. The estate liquidated everything." "Why?" Sarah looked out her window at the dog, still maintaining its vigil. "Did he have pets?" I think so. There might have been a dog, but it wasn't mentioned in the estate inventory." "Sarah, what's this about?" "Nothing, thanks." She hung up before Diane could press further. The local library's archives held more pieces. Sarah spent her day off scrolling through digitized newspapers and obituaries. Thomas Whitmore, age 73. Retired high school English teacher. Survived by no one. The loneliest phrase Sarah had ever read. His wife Margaret had died 15 years earlier. One photo accompanied his obituary. A thin man with white hair and gentle eyes standing in front of 42 Maple Drive. And the newspaper clipping from Margaret's death mentioned Thomas and his beloved dog Cooper. But nothing about Cooper appeared in Thomas's obituary. Sarah drove to the Henderson house that afternoon. Mrs. Henderson's irritation faded when Sarah asked about Thomas. Oh, he was quiet. Kind man. After Margaret died, that dog was all he had. Brown mixed breed. Cooper, I think. Thomas used to sit on that porch for hours with Cooper at his feet. Her expression softened. When the ambulance came for Thomas, everything happened so fast. The dog ran off. Animal control looked, but... She shrugged. These things happen. That night, Sarah sat on her porch. The dog, Cooper, lay 10 feet away, watching her. He's not coming back, she told him. Thomas is gone. Cooper's tail gave one small, uncertain wag. He understood his name. He just didn't understand why his person had abandoned him. Sarah felt something crack inside her chest. Mrs. Chen lived 3 houses down in a tidy bungalow with chrysanthemums lining the walk. She was 84 and sharp as glass, and she'd known Thomas Whitmore for 37 years. "You're the one with his dog on your porch," she said, ushering Sarah inside. "I wondered when you'd come asking." Over tea, Mrs. Chen filled in the gaps. Thomas and Margaret bought 42 Maple Drive in 1983. They'd wanted children but couldn't have them, so they poured their love into their home, their students, and eventually into Cooper. A scraggly puppy Thomas found behind the school cafeteria 13 years ago. After Margaret died, Thomas withdrew, but that dog brought him back to life. They were inseparable. Thomas used to joke that Cooper was his therapist, his alarm clock, and his reason to keep going. What happened the day Thomas died? Mrs. Chen's eyes grew distant. I was here when the ambulance came. Thomas was on the kitchen floor. Cooper was barking. I'd never heard him bark like that. Panicked. When the paramedics loaded Thomas into the ambulance, Cooper tried to jump in after him. Someone grabbed his collar, but he broke free and ran. We searched everywhere. Called animal control, put up flyers. Nothing. After a few weeks, we assumed. She didn't finish. Sarah's hands trembled around her teacup. He's been out there for 6 months, surviving, searching. That dog loved Thomas more than anything in this world, and Thomas loved him back. They belonged to each other. Walking home, Sarah's vision blurred with tears she hadn't allowed herself to shed in 3 years. Since David's funeral. Since she'd decided that loving people, loving anything, hurt too much to risk again. On her porch, Cooper lifted his head. The setting sun caught his eyes, and Sarah saw it clearly. The same expression she'd seen in her own mirror for 3 years. The look of someone waiting for the world to make sense again. She sat down on her porch steps and cried. The letter from Animal Control arrived Monday morning, official and cold. Final notice. If the dog remained on the property after 5 p.m. Friday, officers would remove it. Given its feral status and age, it would likely be classified as unadoptable. Sarah knew what that meant. She'd heard enough stories from Marcus about shelter policies and overcrowding. Mrs. Henderson escalated too, filing a formal complaint with the Homeowners Association. It's been a week, she said when Sarah confronted her. I'm sorry, but rules are rules. Thursday arrived with crushing weight. Sarah took a personal day, calling in sick for the first time in 2 years. She sat on her porch with a blanket and a thermos of coffee, watching Cooper maintain his ritual patrol. "Come here," she said softly. "Please." Cooper's ears swiveled toward her voice, but he stayed 10 feet away. Trust wasn't something you commanded. It was something you earned. Sarah tried everything. She brought out tuna, chicken, beef. Cooper sniffed each offering, but wouldn't come closer. She spoke gently, used Thomas's name, told Cooper stories Mrs. Chen had shared. Nothing worked. By afternoon, desperation set in. Sarah called veterinarians, animal behaviorists, on anyone who might have advice. They all said the same thing. Traumatized animals need time, and time was the one thing she didn't have. As sunset painted her lawn gold, Sarah stopped trying to strategize. She just sat there, watching Cooper watch the house. "I get it," she said finally. "I know what it's like to wait for someone who's never coming home. To go through the motions and pretend you're living, when really you're just existing. Haunting your own life." Cooper stopped pacing and looked at her directly. "I lost someone too, 3 years ago, and I've been doing exactly what you're doing, waiting in the places we used to be together, hoping somehow it'll bring him back." The words came easier now, spilling out in the failing light. The truth she'd never spoken aloud. But he's not coming back. And Thomas isn't either. Friday morning broke cold and clear. Sarah had 24 hours. She'd spent the night researching everything she could about helping traumatized animals. The advice was consistent: patience, routine, and removing pressure. But Sarah had no time for patience. She had until 5 p.m. At dawn. She brought out every blanket from her linen closet and spread them on the porch. They smelled like her house now, but underneath was the faint scent of the previous owner. Thomas's detergent, his soap, the accumulated essence of 40 years lived in these rooms. Cooper approached the porch cautiously, sniffing. His tail gave one tentative wag. Sarah sat on her front step and started talking. She told Cooper everything Mrs. Chen had shared, about Thomas and Margaret, about the life they'd built here, about how much Thomas had loved him. She described Thomas's last day as gently as she could. "He didn't want to leave you," Sarah said. "But sometimes people don't get a choice. Sometimes life just ends, and the people left behind have to figure out how to keep going." She talked for hours, her voice growing hoarse. She told Cooper about David, her fiancé who died in a car accident 3 years ago, about how she'd sold their apartment because she couldn't stand to be in the place they'd chosen together, about moving to this house specifically because it had no memories, no ghosts. "But memories aren't the enemy," she whispered. I think the enemy is forgetting how to let anyone new in. And I've been so good at that. So good at keeping everything at a distance." Cooper had stopped pacing. He stood at the edge of the porch, listening. "Thomas wouldn't want you suffering like this," Sarah continued. "He'd want you safe. He'd want you cared for. And I think—" Her voice cracked. "I think David wouldn't want me living like a ghost either." As the sun climbed higher, Sarah felt something shift. In herself. In the air between them. "We're still here, Cooper. We're still alive." That has to mean something. Cooper took one careful step toward her. Sarah woke on her couch at 6 a.m., neck stiff from falling asleep mid-vigil. The deadline was in 11 hours. Through the window, she saw Cooper lying on the porch, closer than he'd ever been. Close enough that she could see the gray around his muzzle, the gentle rise and fall of his breathing. She opened her front door slowly. Didn't speak. Just sat down in the doorway, leaving the entrance open behind her. An invitation, not a demand. Minutes passed. The neighborhood woke around them. Joggers passed. Cars started. Life continued, indifferent to the small drama unfolding on her porch. Sarah's phone buzzed. Animal control confirming the noon appointment. Her finger hovered over the call button. She could end this right now. They'd take Cooper. And she'd return to her orderly, controlled, painless existence. Safe. Alone. Hollow. She set the phone down. Your choice, she told Cooper. I'm not going to force you, but I'm here if you want me to be. More minutes. Sarah's legs went numb. The sun climbed higher. Then Cooper moved. One slow, limping step. Another. He was so close now, Sarah could see every scar, every rib, every mark that 6 months of survival had left on his body. His eyes met hers, one brown, one clouded, and Sarah saw the question there. Can I trust you? Will you stay? Yes, Sarah whispered. I'm staying. Cooper took the final step and collapsed against her legs, too exhausted to run anymore. His body trembled with relief, with exhaustion, with 6 months of waiting finally ended. Sarah wrapped her arms around him and called Dr. Reyes, and the vet Marcus had recommended. Not animal control. Never animal control. I need an emergency appointment, she said, her voice steady for the first time in days. For my dog. His name is Cooper, and he's coming home. When she hung up, she buried her face in Cooper's matted fur and cried. For Thomas, for David, for herself, for every lost thing that ever found its way back. 2 months later, snow dusted the lawn of 42 Maple Drive. Cooper's paw had healed completely, though he still limped slightly on cold mornings. His coat gleamed now, rich brown with threads of gray. He'd gained 12 pounds and had a clean bill of health aside from some arthritis Dr. Reyes managed with medication. Sarah sat on the porch, their porch now, with her coffee, watching Cooper patrol his kingdom. He still checked the same 3 spots every morning, but his routine had changed. Now he returned to her after each circuit, pressing against her legs for reassurance before continuing. Checking the perimeter? She asked, scratching behind his ears. Cooper's tail wagged, a real wag, full and happy. Mrs. Henderson had become Cooper's unlikely ally, bringing treats and asking about his health. I was wrong, she'd admitted last week. That dog belongs here. You both do. Sarah had started therapy, finally addressing David's death and her years of self-imposed isolation. Her therapist had smiled when Sarah mentioned Cooper. Animals have a way of healing the parts of us we didn't know were broken. On Saturday, Sarah drove to Meadowbrook Cemetery with Cooper in the passenger seat. Thomas's grave was simple. Thomas Whitmore, beloved teacher and husband. Sarah added, and faithful friend to Cooper. She placed flowers and knelt down, one hand on Cooper's head. Thank you, she said to the gravestone, for leading me to him, for teaching him how to love and be loyal. I'll take care of him, I promise. Cooper sniffed the flowers, then sat beside her, quiet and still. That night, Sarah found Cooper standing in the living room, staring at the corner where Mrs. Chen had said Thomas's reading chair once sat. Cooper stayed there for several minutes, then turned and walked to Sarah's side. I know, Sarah said softly. You still miss him. That's okay. Missing someone doesn't mean you can't love someone new. Cooper rested his head on her lap, and Sarah felt the truth of her own words settle into her bones. They'd both learned that home isn't a place. It's the courage to let yourself belong somewhere, to someone, again. It's choosing connection despite loss. It's understanding that loyalty to the past doesn't require abandoning the future. Sarah looked around her living room, filled now with dog beds and chew toys and the comfortable mess of shared life. "We're home," she told Cooper. And finally, impossibly, they both were. Thank you for staying with us till the end. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, and stay tuned for new heartwarming stories like this.